Hey guys.
Can everybody hear everybody?
I can hear you. Yep.
Okay. So we all know that it's Will's technology at home that
Will is logged in as a moderator.
Oh.
Is he really?
Yeah. Let me see if I can send him a message.
Well, he should be able to hear us. I don't see him logged in yet. Oh no, I'm seeing the 3 participants as us. Will says he cannot get in. I see Eileen. Hi, Eileen.
Okay, well, we are just a little bit after noon, so I think I'll go ahead and get started, and hopefully people will just sort of bounce in and catch up when they can. So I wanted to say welcome and thanks for joining us for our webinar on cloud backups, what matters, what happens, and how Global Data Vault and Veeam work together. I'm Tristan Faris, Director of Marketing for Global Data Vault, and I have a number of my colleagues with me here today. So before we get started, a few key housekeeping items for you. If you need to leave the webinar early, we totally understand, and you'll get a link afterwards. It will automatically be sent to you, so you'll be able to view the recording for a couple of weeks afterwards. The next thing is we really encourage you to ask questions. These guys actually prefer more of a conversational format for presenting and an open dialogue. So we'll let them kind of run through the presentation, but at the end, please during the presentation, put your questions in chat. Then at the end, we'll go back and address those. And speaking of chat, we have a couple of special guests in there. We also have Kelly Caldwell from Global Data Vault and Ali Stalter, our Veeam rep. So they are super smart people, so they can help answer questions too. And we might even have a prize or two for the greatest questions at the end. Keep an eye out for a poll. I think Kelly might put a couple of those in there, so that would be some fun information that we'd like to get your feedback from. And with that, I'm going to roll forward. And let me introduce the first member of our team and really the mastermind behind our session today. So Leslie Faris is our territory manager for the Eastern Time Zone, and I'll let her tell you why she's so unique to our organization. Leslie.
Thank you, Tristan. Hello, everyone. Welcome to our webinar today. We're glad you're with us and appreciate your time. As Tristan said, I'm Leslie Faris, territory manager for the Eastern Time Zone, and I have now been here for about a year. However, backups are not necessarily new to me. I've also worked at Veeam Software for several years. Having experience from both the backup software side and now our cloud solutions side, it gives me a unique background in the DR space. Now, as being somewhat newer to Global Data Vault, I have been included on numerous technical calls with our customers and engineering team discussing their infrastructure and what the best architecture is for consistent quality backups to the cloud. And as a result, I started to see consistencies in the questions being asked about our solution, best practices, and how we work with Veeam. Some of these questions include, why do we need to have a local copy and not go straight to the cloud? Or in case of a disaster or ransomware attack, how do I handle a full failover? We find what matters most to our customers is security, compliance, immutable copies, testing practices, and the recovery process and speed after a disaster. So what we're trying to do today is address many of these topics and give you a high-level picture of DR trends and how global data vaults solve many of these concerns. We believe this is an important discussion for businesses interested in creating a robust disaster recovery plan. So without further ado, I'm now going to introduce you to Will Bassich, our CEO and co-founder. He has instilled a culture here of service first, focusing on quality, results, and simplicity. He believes there is no value in wondering about responsibilities when it comes to DRAS services. So with Global Data Vault, it's always our problem. Take it away, Will.
Thank you, Leslie, and also thank you guys for attending today. We appreciate your interest and you're coming on your lunch hour or whatever time zone you're in, whatever hour this is. What we will try to cover today are an overview of popular solutions. We're going to keep this broad and hopefully not turn this into an advertisement, but more of an informative opportunity to talk about the popular solutions, engage with you and your questions, whatever you have, you feel free to bring it anytime you want. And then we'll cover a little bit about emerging trends, what's new and interesting in the space in terms of how data is moving, where it's moving from and to, on-premises environments, cloud environments, public cloud environments, and such. And I will turn it over to the people who can explain this better than I can, particularly Brian. Brian has been Director of Sales at Global Data Vault for more than 10 years. But the unique thing about Brian is he came to that position first from a technical and engineering background. So when Brian talks to customers, he's able to really understand their problems on a technical level, but also able to help them move toward and create a vision for a proper solution for that customer that really fits. So when I think of Brian, I think of leading to solutions, and I will turn it over to you on that note.
Thank you, Will. Thank you for the kind words, and good morning to the West Coast and Mountain Time viewers, and good afternoon to the Central and Eastern Time viewers. They kind of gave you a little overview of what we're going to discuss today, but I just want to kind of get into a little bit more of the details. And we're going to start off why everybody is on this call, and it's really about backups. You know, the way we take a little bit different approach to backups, of course. Our differentiator is, you know, like we said, it's always our problem, but it's a more of the relationship and the personal touch that we're going to give to our customers into achieving a successful offsite backup and DR solution. The way we do that with our unique solution is you take your primary infrastructure, and the product protection strategy is we create a local backup job, which gets translated to the cloud backup repository. In addition to that, we're adding some extra layers of enhancement, which is taking Veeam Insider Protection and some SIM product AI around that, creating what we've established as enhanced data protection. That's once you run a backup, whether it's successful, has warnings or failures, that information is then translated, excuse me, to an information portal. And you can see at the bottom of the screen, it's basically showing you your files that have been backed up on that enhanced data protection repository. And we're going to get a little bit more into that in the next few slides on why is it so secure and what makes us so different. These portals are available by email, of course. After you run a backup, you're going to receive that backup email. Web console anytime, 24 hours a day, and then of course it is web friendly as well. How Global Data Vault and Veeam work together. I understand a lot of you folks on this call may not currently be Veeam customers. Since we are a Veeam Platinum provider, this is really geared towards that. So if you want to have that conversation, you're looking for a solution, we can take that offline and we can compare what you're currently doing on-prem or off-site, and then how we feel like Veeam can be a better opportunity and a better solution for you. But at Global Data Vault, in the previous slide, we talked about Veeam Insider Protection, which is a new feature that they've incorporated in version 9.5 update 4. and then some AI intelligence that we've outsourced to a managed security SOC. We've bundled that together, and which we came up again with enhanced data protection. The anatomy of attack these days has gotten real sophisticated. So, basically the ransom attacker gains access to the local environment. Once they've achieved the credentials, they have the ability to log in and delete those offsite backups. Then they start encrypting the files locally. Then, of course, that's when they demand the ransom. With Global Data Vault, we take the extra layer of protection to protect you from that. So not only do we have that invisible copy, which is, we consider as an AirGap copy, it's offline compared to what the end user can see locally. So in the event of a hack, we have the ability to repoint to the separate repository. That's another copy in our infrastructure, and we can recover it back from that repository. Next slide, Tristan. We talked a little bit about the reporting, whether you can get it via email, web-based, or mobile device. And this is just the graphic that shows, you can see at the top, this is our corporate portal, 51 servers, the storage. But the thing we really want to focus on are a few items. You'll see on the right side, the green that says LOC and REM. This is very important. This is your local copy status and your remote copy status. We're not, of course, we want to always see success, but our main measurement is quality and are you within SLA? That's a big factor when it comes time to recovering your data. What's my RTO time objective and my restore point objective? At the below is the enhanced data protection that we just covered in the previous slide, which is that invisible copy that's air-gapped offline to the customer in the event something horrible happens on-prem or to your production repository that's keeping your live backup data. This is showing, basically, and again, we keep 7 days and a weekly offline. These are fully recoverable snapshot restore points in the event of something like that happens. What Global Data Vault does, we think we're specialized in Veeam protection, providing DR as a service. We're a fully managed service, and that means both sides of the aisle, local and offsite. If you're already a Veeam customer and you do not utilize a Veeam cloud service provider, and you partner with Global Data Vault, we take the responsibility to monitor your local environment, report back, and as a fully managed service, we support that as professional services as far as what's going on locally. We've always said if you're having issues locally, warnings, errors, failures, whatever, and you get the Veeam report that comes within the reporting within Veeam, it's very detailed. It's way too much information, and it's not specific. So going back to our portal that we covered in the previous window, it's more detailed, it's specific, and it gets right to the point. If you have any failures locally, that's essentially going to possibly translate to having issues in the cloud side. So we want to remedy that on the local side to ensure you have good data coming across on the cloud side. We utilize an AirGap strategy like we discussed earlier. We protect VMware, Hyper-V, Windows, Linux, physicals and virtuals, and of course, private cloud, which is what we are, and then public cloud, your AWS and your Azures. It's a little bit different approach, but we can have that conversation offline as well, but we do protect public cloud as well. We talked a little bit about the local and remote recovery, but let's get down, to the nuts and bolts of it. In order to provide best practices and follow Veeam's 3-2-1, you have to have a local repository. We get calls asking for, can I just send it straight to the cloud? Absolutely not. We're giving you a guarantee. We're giving you an SLA that we're going to be able to deliver when needed in the event of something that happens. So we require that customer has that local copy, and then we'll take that backup copy job. The way Veeam works, that backup copy job looks at that local backup, does a check some of the data, does a health check, then it sends it offsite. So that's why we require that local and remote recovery. Some of our customers and some of the requirements for future customers as opportunities arise, they require that short window. Global Data Vault takes Cloud Connect, unlike some of the other providers. We take Cloud Connect and we can do DR from a Cloud Connect repository. We take the flat file, we convert it, we spin it up, we network it, we firewall it, give you VPN access, and then we give you that in a 4-hour window. For the customers that are requiring that critical SLA times, we incorporate Veeam replication. Veeam replication is that true VHD or VMDK replica that comes off site as a warm status on dedicated infrastructure. It's a 1-to-1 hardware match. This is how we achieve that short 15-minute SLA window. There are some caveats to that. All of our replication customers, we kind of break it down to them in detail why we feel like that they need to incorporate replication with Cloud Connect. Veeam replication does have some limitations. It's not very granular. Once you start it, you can't stop it like on a weekend and pick it back up on Monday. So if you're running it every 15 minutes, you hit the 20 snapshot threshold. Well, if you start on a Friday, you get hacked on a Friday evening, you come back in on Monday morning, now you've overwrote the replication restore points. So we always include Cloud Connect with replication at a very competitive cost. And I want to make that clear because, a lot of people will think that, oh, well, I'm doubling up on the VMs and doubling up on the storage. We've taken that into account. As a business, we make this very cost effective. And the reason why we do that, if you overrun those replication snapshots, we always had that ability to go back to the night before or even longer with the longer term retention to make sure that we're able to give you that recovery and failover abilities. Every one of our DR customers does get a quarterly DR testing, which is automated and documented. We also do an annual DR test, which is a full production environment testing, as long as you can get on guest Wi-Fi, hotspot, Starbucks, from home, wherever it may be, because of the IP protocols. We will use the same IP addresses of your internal network, so you will have to be outside of your local environment. But we will spin that up, had our customers or MSPs do that testing. We will leave it up for 1 week. We'll ask for a sign off once approved, and then we'll take that site back down. But we highly encourage that for all of our customers. Couple of slides, we showed our portal. So of course it's a single pane web portal. It's a daily email, but for some of our MSPs and VARs that have multiple customers, we can provide a single pane view of all your customers and one reporting mechanism. And again, it's via email, web portal, and it is mobile friendly as well, which you can access it 24 hours a day, 365 days a year. Monitoring reporting of our customers and our infrastructure plays a big factor. Global Data Vault is real sticklers of quality. And I mentioned that it's not about just success. It's about, are you within SLA? We want to make sure that we can deliver what we're saying. So monitoring and reporting of our internal infrastructure, as well as the customers' local backup storage, is monitored. This includes patching, disk space, RAM, compute. Is your AV status up to date? So all of that is hooked into our backup and DR solution, which brings huge benefits as far as our engineers being able to deliver good quality for our customers. DR plus backup, like I just said, it's you're getting best of both worlds. You can get your, your files, folders, that your recovery of directories and so forth, but also full DR spin up. To us, quality doesn't mean success; it means SLAs on RTOs and RPOs. We do think we are Veeam specialists. I think we employ the most Veeam engineers of any VCSP. We have 2 Veeam architects, and I do think we have the youngest Veeam architect on staff in the world. And we have a little internal joke. He's a very young guy. He was a Veeam architect before he could actually legally drink. So that's just kind of a little tidbit about a little insider information at Global Data Vault. So educating our engineers to be Veeam specialists. When you call our support team, you are getting a Veeam specialist. You're not getting an order taker that's just going to create a ticket and then pass you off to somebody else. And what else? I just want to kind of add a little bit more. We try to assign a Veeam engineer to every customer, and we understand that sometimes if they're off, it's a weekend, you may not reach that engineer. But the mindset behind that is he knows your infrastructure. He knows that customer personally. He knows the way things are set up, and vice versa. The customer knows him. They build that relationship. We just think that it is a real good mechanism for success. So again, we do think we are Veeam specialists. Next slide, Tristan. And without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and pass this back off to our CEO, Will Bassage. But again, I want to thank everyone for taking the time out of your day and to join us for this webinar. And Will, I'm going to go ahead and pass it back off to you.
Brian, we had a question that I think you might want to take. How often does this is from Bob, how often does the invisible copy get backed up?
Great question. So Bob, since we are incorporating this into the when we quote a customer, it's included. We want that included for every customer. We're keeping 7 days in a weekly at all times, on top of your retention policy that you define on the production environment.
But I think what he's asking is does that come with every instance of backup that we make?
No, we keep in 7 days in a weekly.
So with each backup, there's an invisible backup.
Yes, sir. Yep.
Exactly.
Yep.
Okay.
Great question, Bob. And if you want to know some more details about that, you have our contact info. Just shoot me an email, and I'm happy to go into details on that.
Okay. So in wrapping up today, and Brian, Tristan, Leslie, thank you for everything to pull this together. In wrapping up today, I'm going to go out of order on this slide. How did GDV and Veeam work together? We've been in the DR space since before we worked with Veeam, and we worked with other providers before. Today, Global Data Vault is purely a Veeam provider. That's the only thing we do, and it's from a variety of reasons. Veeam has brought to us the best technology of any backup and replication software provider that we've ever had the opportunity to work with. And they have brought us more smart people to work with who spend time with us and take time with us and help us deliver these results to our customers together than any other provider we ever worked with, not even close. And they've just been, Veeam is just the level of help and assistance and care that we get from Veeam software is so far above and beyond anyone we've ever worked with. So to Ali on the call, please relay our thanks and appreciation to everyone at Veeam, and let's remember what an important point that is. What matters about backup and DR, what really matters is what we call quality. I think if you talk to other people in the space and you ask them what is quality or what matters, they often will go to telling you things about their infrastructure, or maybe their compliance, or their regulatory postures, and so forth and so on. What matters is what we call quality, and quality is our measurement of where you're going to be. and you need to know where you're going to be every day. You need to know. You don't want a report that says we backed up this or we backed up that. What you want to know is if mayhem breaks loose and we're attacked, or we burn, or we melt down, or we lose our data, or we delete our data, or whatever happens, all those things that can go wrong, where are we going to be at this minute? So what we report to you is where you stand, where every piece of infrastructure, every server, everything we're protecting, we report that to you every day, sometimes multiple times a day, and it's always available in a portal. So you can always know, am I in compliance with my SLAs? That's what we call quality. GDV is different because we bring to this the mindset that it's always our problem, and it's a bit of a big thing for an engineer, for example, in our organization when they're new, to wrap their head around the idea of, hey, it's always our problem. What does that mean? I mean, there's a lot of things that go into delivering what we deliver. It's the customer's software, it's the customer's hardware, it's the connectivity, it's the network, it's the WAN, it's our things, it's people, it's process, it's all these technologies that go into it. You know, when we work with customers, we may spend a few weeks or a month or a couple of months, and then they become our customer, and then they get onboarded, and then they're our customer, and it might be a few weeks, it might be a few months, it might be a few years, but invariably they're going to need a restore or a recovery. And it does us no good, or it does no one any good if that recovery or that restore can't happen as it needs to. It's no help to say, oh, well, it was Microsoft's fault. Right? That's why we take the view that we manage to the solution, we monitor what the result's going to be, and even when there are obstacles that are beyond our control that are preventing the customer from getting the protection that they need, we take ownership of that, and if we can solve it, we solve it. If it's someone else that needs to solve it, we become the persistent pursuer of the resolution of that problem, because there's no point, if you're not getting the protection you need, there's no point in you staying and being our customer, right? And we want to keep our customers, because and that's how we've grown the business, is through keeping customers, and we've worked hard to do that, and we appreciate the loyalty that we've enjoyed. So I'm going to flip it back to Leslie now, who will field any other questions we have at this point. But again, I thank you for your attendance, and I enjoyed spending a little time with everyone today.
Great. Thank you so much, Will. I'd like to first address any of the questions we've had. And the one was around the enhanced data protection. I believe Kelly has answered many of his questions that he had. Are there any other questions out there that anybody would like to cover? Otherwise, I can throw out a couple that I've heard of from my customers. Let's give a second. I don't see anything, but Brian, I know you mentioned EDP, which is the enhanced data protection, and our security, but I was wondering if you could maybe expand upon our security and SIM with the company that we work with. Just
Sure.
kind of give us a bit more of a deeper dive on that.
Sure. So as we had to step up our game against ransomware attacks as a provider, we have to take every precaution. We partner with the company that takes a SIM product, built AI around it, and came out with a product that we have incorporated into our infrastructure in both data centers, as well as we've extended that to our backup appliances at the local environment. So it's a managed security SOC. It's not just a monitoring software, it's a monitor and remediation tool. So in the event of any kind of registry edits, file extension changes, encryption of the data in the repository, they will immediately kill the network connection, pick up the phone and call us, and then we'll work with the customer or MSP on the remediation of the attack. That's in a nutshell. We can get into it a little deeper offline, But that, in a nutshell, that's the best explanation I can give.
Great. I'm going to go back to Bob's question about the EDP backups, and he's wondering more about remote office locations. So if there's multiple offices that are backing up, how does the monitoring and the enhanced data protection work for that?
I'm going to try to give you the best answer I can give without making it too vague, Bob. There's a lot of variables in that. So architecture of the environment from the main location to the remote sites is critical in the way it's set up. You know, technically, you really should have a backup appliance at each one of those. If there's backup proxies in place at those remote sites, we'll bring in our architect team to just kind of verify and make sure that everything is set up. But even on the remote locations, each will be independent into a backup repository in our data center, and that will get extended to each individual repository. If that remote location is backing up to a data center and it's all being backed up under one solution, then of course it's going to be a little bit different. So I'm trying to answer this the best way without making it too vague. I hope that's clear, but we can achieve that, but there's a couple of different ways to attack that, and it's really going to be based on how is it currently architected now.
Kelly is asking, if you can expand on the backup appliance.
Yep. So a lot of our customers come to us, they already have Veeam running locally. So obviously they have their own backup appliance. And when I say appliance, it's backup storage. If a customer comes to us new to Veeam, and we provide the appliance, which is a local data vault, it's a BDR device. You know, there's a lot of acronyms for this, but basically it's a backup storage server, specifically dedicated to host the Veeam backups.
Great. I have another question. So what happens if an insider deletes my cloud backups? I think you kind of mentioned that before, but if you could just make sure we understand, does the customer get an alert? Is the security, stopping the backup? Like, can you kind of go through that process just a little bit?
If the customer is attacked internally, so obviously they have all the credentials they need to do whatever they want to do. Unfortunately, on the live production environment, if a domain admin deletes the data, it is what it is. So, which brings us to the recovery part, the recovery of the invisible repository that sits offline, air-gapped, that we have the ability to go back to recover. And that's a really good question, because it is not just a myth. It's a fact. And we have helped recover several customers, some very large customers that had the internal hack, that we were able to recover their data from the EDP portion of the repository. Because again, if they have domain admin credentials, they have the rights to do whatever they want. So if they delete that data and they don't have that second layer protection, it's very unfortunate, but it's a fact. So that's why we insist that we incorporate that in every customer.
I mean, I think we've come to see at this point that the ransomers know that if a good backup exists,
Yep,
they're not going to get paid. And the first thing that they do before they deploy their encryption is they find the backup software, and they either turn it off or encrypt it or delete the cloud backups. Well, our invisible copy, our enhanced data protection, our AirGap solution, whatever you want to call it, is keeping another copy of that data. Just this past summer, we had a large food manufacturer in the Midwest who has over 500 servers protected with us suffer an attack like that in the middle of the night. We had their critical servers up and running in a couple of hours, even though they were quote unquote deleted from our environment. We had them up and running in a couple hours, and the next day the whole failback process was started for their whole environment. Later this summer, we had a managed service provider who was hosting a good bit of data for their customers suffer the same sort of attack. And when we did the recovery for them the next morning, their head engineer texted us and said, "You guys have probably saved 50 people from being laid off at this company." We know that that's the threat we face. We don't think it makes sense to have a solution that doesn't have full protection against that, and probably couldn't sleep at night if we couldn't offer that to our customers.
Well, you want to go ahead and answer the question of David? And David, yes, we all partner with the security as a software company that I mentioned earlier. But David has a question, Will. What guarantees that they stay protected from a ransomware attack? Or what can the customer expect from a coverage standpoint? I'm not sure I understand that part, but.
Well, I mean, that is the whole purpose of what we're providing is in terms of that AirGap invisible copy strategy. And every time a backup comes to us, every single time, we are keeping a copy of that data that is not visible from the customer site. And even if our backup is deleted from the customer site, we still have that full copy of the data available at the flip of a switch. So I'm hoping that answers the question. Do we work with an existing cybersecurity vendor? Yeah. I think Brian has mentioned that we're working with Bitlift. Bitlift is a managed security service provider that sits on top of, they've built intellectual property on top of Logarithm and on top of Secure Onyx. That those are both SIM products, and Bitlift's product on top converts the information that is generated by the security and event information manager. So an example of what it would do is Logarithm will report to you if you're suffering a brute force attack. Somebody keeps trying to log in with the same username and password, and tries. The software that sits on top of that shuts off that, walls off that IP, and completely neutralizes that attack. Or if it sees a permissions escalation that can't be confirmed, a regular user was converted to an administrative user. It will lock that user down until that permissions escalation is confirmed. So that is the point of adding on this extra layer of software and artificial intelligence on top of the security and event information manager. If the customer already has a cybersecurity vendor, do you work with them, or could you? Yeah, absolutely. Right. I mean, we're not going to force every part of our solution onto anyone. And a good number of our customers are not with Bitlift, particularly some of the more advanced, more sophisticated customers. They've already implemented solutions like this, and we're happy to work with that and learn about that. But it's independent of the enhanced data protection that we provide. Those problems that they're solving somewhat different problems. But yes, to answer your question, the short answer is yes.
Yeah, so let me elaborate a little bit more on that. So even though we're using that that vendor, so they're protecting us and that backup appliance that we provide locally. We're not extending that. I just want to make that clear. We're not extending it to the local environment. Our agreement with that vendor is protecting our infrastructure and the backup appliance where Veeam is being stored. If you want to extend that to your local environment, that's a conversation you can have with them directly.
I think Bob had another question around EDP. He says, asks, is the ransomware for sure not backed up to the invisible cloud? I am pretty sure you mentioned that, but to make sure.
I mean, yeah, I'll take that one. Will may also have, but no, I mean, the unfortunate thing, just like data corruption, no, there is no guarantees, that it's not sitting in 0 day and just waiting to be exposed. But that's where the retention policies really come into play. But the good thing is when that attack is being enacted, that Bitlift catches it at that moment and then puts a stop to it. That's the best I can answer that.
Yeah, and we actually had a case like this about 4 or 5 years ago on New Year's Eve, and it was New Year's Eve fell on a Thursday or something, so we were all looking forward to a long weekend, and about team was looking around about 3 o'clock going, what do we call it a day now? And one of our biggest customers called us and said, we've just suffered a ransomware attack and we're all locked up. And so we said, and we had, everything was in good shape. Their backups were in great shape. We restored them. We sent the data back to them. It wasn't huge. It was about 7 terabytes of data, and they had good connectivity. So we got it back to them real quickly. They loaded everything back up, and then about now it's 5 o'clock, and they call again, and they go, wow, we just got locked again. So we actually put them into a sandbox and restored them over the course of that evening 3 or 4 more times before we finally isolated where the actual threat originated, and were able to neutralize it, because it turned out it was a PC that was sitting on a kiosk on a big screen TV in their lobby, and the PC didn't have antivirus software on it. It got infected. It got into the backups. And we had it siloed, so it didn't impact anything other than their data. And once we knew where the infection was, we were able to restore it, not bring it live, scrub out the infection, and bring them up and back. But that's kind of the level of involvement that we will have when one of those incidents happens. Because that's our whole purpose, is to be there when those moments strike, and to work through the recovery that is required in the circumstances, and our engineers really kind of live for that challenge. It's their moment to grab their helmet and run out on the field and be a hero.
Yep.
Will, you mentioned something about connectivity. Is there a standard that our customers would need to make sure that they get the speed of the recovery that we're offering? I mean,
it's a pretty broad standard, and it does vary with the change rate and compression rate that a given customer will achieve. But I think customers should look to make sure that their connectivity, and this is really funny, because it's when I give you this formula, it's kind of like I don't know, cooking eggs and miles per hour. How many miles per hour do you need to cook an egg? The formula is about 2.5 megabits per terabyte. Okay, so if anybody wants to write that down, and it's something we've learned through experience, and it's not hard science. Customers will understand their own environments, their own change rates and whatnot. Some people have data that they keep that doesn't change as much. Some people have highly transactional environments. Some data is more dense. There's more images. There's more graphics. Some people have more databases that compress really well. But our basic rule of thumb, again, is 2.5 megabits of connectivity per 1 terabyte of primary storage is a sort of safe harbor general number we've observed that can work.
Okay, great. That's helpful. Then what about a side note to that? Well, not a side note, but it brought up another thought about retention policies and how much storage, because I know we look at protected storage and how that might be a little bit different from what people are used to. But then when you send things up to the cloud, you have to make sure that we have enough space for them based off of their retention policies. So I don't know if Brian, you want to, or will touch upon like, what our standards are and whether or not, what to look for when they want to, store, I don't know, 2 years of data or 10 years of data.
Okay. Well, I can tell you. Okay. So our standard retention policy offsite is 10 restore points and 3 monthlies. To achieve the longer term retention, of course, it's consumed space is what it's going to boil down to. So depending on the requirements or the corporate policy of how long to retain the data, is going to be really dictated. Is it do you want it in weeklies, monthlies, or an annual backup job? The smaller chunks of retention consume more space than an annual run at the end of the year. So again, I know I'm being vague here, but there's just so many variables as to what are you trying to achieve. I mean, do you need quarterlies, weeklies, monthlies, or annuals? Like I said, annuals consume less than 12 monthlies.
And we have several standard retention policies that are built into our model, and we can quote based on those, or we can work with you to develop a custom retention policy and provide the protection based on that basis.
Yep.
Great. It looks like
the Trojan virus question.
Yes, Bob was asking about the virus.
That is very similar to the story I told about the kiosk, the PC kiosk, and yes, our security perimeter, if it's on your local appliance, is designed to detect that. And one of the things that we didn't talk about this, but one of the things that the AI that's built on top of it does is that it looks across their entire customer base. And if it sees the profile of a particular attack at one customer, it builds that into its intelligence so that it's aware of a particular threat profile in every other customer's environment. Most Trojan viruses will be ferreted out by the antivirus software in that process, but that's why we have it in our environment, and that's why when we do the recovery, we do it in a sandbox. So that if in the rare case that it's still in there, like we had that New Year's Eve, we're going to have the ability to bring that data back, find it, kill it, and then do the restore.
Yeah. So I'll expand just a little bit more about those Trojan horses. So we had a customer call, was not a GDV customer, had just got attacked, and called and asked, "Hey, can you help me?" Obviously, it's too late at that point. So he ended up becoming a customer. So they ended up paying the ransom. After they paid the ransom, the hacker actually emailed them and said, "By the way, you should use stronger passwords." He said, "I used XXX 12 password." So the owner of the company said, "Wow, we changed that password over 2 years ago. How did he still have access to that data?" Well, they've been sitting there for 2 years, keystroking. So every time they would change the password, he had it. And 2 years down the road, they launched the attack. And it's unfortunate he had no protection at the time. But currently, he is a GDV customer that would have prevented that situation.
And look, let me throw this Kelly Trojan equal time bomb comment. Let me throw one other little time bomb out there. Okay. we don't know what the impact of this is going to be, but we think it means that everyone in the IT world needs to, it's something everyone needs to pay attention to. About 2 weeks ago, the U.S. Treasury Department issued an advisory to the effect that they may enforce civil and or criminal penalties on people who pay ransoms if the ransomer is a listed organization, and a lot of the big ransomers are on Treasury's lists. And while I think you know, as a business executive, you sit there and you go, you know, if somebody tells me I need to pay a ransom to get my data back, I'm more worried about getting my data back than whatever trouble I might get in with the government for paying to get my data back. My God, how unreasonable would it be to pay to get my data back and then also get punished by the U.S. government? It completely doesn't make sense, right? But what is the concern I think people have to be aware of is if you're expecting your insurance company to pay the ransom through your cyber liability, this might become an easy out. We don't know what's going to happen, but it might become an easy out for the insurance company. And you know, I think we've all been through the homeowner's claim or the auto insurance claim where they're like, oh, wait a minute, you're not covered at, I don't know, football games. That was excluded from your coverage, right? You know, paying a ransom in violation of a federal regulation or even an advisory might become something that the Department of Treasury hangs its hat on. And I don't mean to fearmonger, but it is something we should all be concerned about. We are.
Yeah. I don't think we have any other questions, but there was something that I wanted you to expand upon, Will or Brian. Will, you talked a lot about why we chose Veeam, why we work with Veeam. I was wondering if you could talk a little bit more about our communication with them and how we work with their development team.
Well, okay. Yeah, good point, Leslie. Thank you. We have technical cadence calls on the development side. Our CTO is not on this call, but if you're interested in global data vault and want to learn more really about what's under the hood, Tom is a good guy to talk to. And among the things he can tell you about our relationship with Veeam are that we're on a technical cadence call with both the operations team and the development team, and we've been flattered that Veeam has included us. There's not a lot of other providers in the space that have had that opportunity to speak with the developers directly, and they've brought ideas to us early in their development cycles and got our feedback, and I think they've improved the Veeam product a little bit based on our experience. We're honored to be considered sort of a leader in the space with them, and someone who can give them feedback. And we do really appreciate those relationships with Veeam. So thank you for that. Good question, Leslie.
I think that's pretty much most of everything that the audience has asked and that I have listed. Is there anything else at this point that anyone has to ask our team? All right, I think we'll end it there as far as the questions go. I'm going to turn it over to Trista, and thank you, everyone.
Yep, thank you.
Thank you.
All you guys for all that feedback. I want to especially thank Bob and David for their great questions, and we're going to follow up with an Amazon gift card for each of you using the email that you provided for registration. For the rest of you, we'll be getting your t-shirts out here in the next few weeks, and if you have any, once we're done, if you think, oh, I should have asked them that, feel free to pop an email over to sales@Global Data Vault, and either Brian or Leslie will grab that. and they can follow up with a phone call to maybe have a more in-depth conversation. Before we go, just a reminder to watch for our next couple of webinars. We've got them listed online at globaldatavault.com/webinars. And thanks for attending.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye-bye.